used to doing it, there's just not a whole lot that you have to check beforehand, other than just making sure audio and stuff comes through.
Yeah,
Speaking of which,
I like how you're like mid sentence and clicked live, and we're live.
Yes, hello. Yes, we are. One of the things I forget to do is go back and in YouTube, you can actually like clip out. So I need to clip out the banter because we'll wait a couple minutes and officially start or whatever. But I always forget to clip it out and then add timestamps. I think I need to pay somebody to go back and do that stuff again.
Yeah, the chapters go along. Chapters are really great for yeah.
Yeah. That thing.
Yeah.
What are you looking at down there?
So I was pulling up the stream so that I could pop out the chat for it, at least from YouTube. Nice. I know I've got the StreamYard stuff over there, but all of a sudden I had you talking to me in 2 spots because of that.
Yep. Been there. Let's see. Is anybody hanging out with us yet? Hello, if you are. There should be a fun.
We got Kadu, who's one of our product managers at Hygraph.
Oh, nice.
We got Will Johnson. What's up, Will?
Will Johnson. Will is everywhere. Always appreciate the support from Will.
Hey, Brittany's here.
Where do you see Brittany? I don't see Brittany. I bet it's
YouTube,
on Twitch.
In YouTube chat.
YouTube on YouTube. Chat. Oh, there. It just came through for me.
I got YouTube chat up next to StreamYard's implementation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So StreamYard is definitely a few seconds behind. Brittany, what's up? Shout just in case anyone is hiring DevRel / developer / other things.
True story.
Check out Brittany. Brittany is
Brittany's amazing.
I feel like I say this a lot, but Brittany, not about Brittany, but about more people than it seems natural. But like there's just a large handful of people that I get really excited about, and Brittany is one of those people. So everybody check out Brittany if you haven't already.
Brittany's in Michigan. Is in the mitten with me too.
Yeah.
In Michigan.
How far, do you know how far away you are?
We're like hours apart.
Yeah.
Other side of the state. But it's Tennessee. It's like it's the opposite ends.
Right. Far away. Yeah. So well, I guess let's just go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
So this will be fun. So we're gonna stream. We're gonna talk about. I'm gonna have you explain. I could do it, but I want to hear like you explain. But we're gonna talk about content federation, which I feel like seems like an intimidating term, but it's really not. We're gonna talk about consuming data from APIs. We're gonna talk about what a Hygraph is, how that relates to getting data from APIs, content federation, and GraphQL in the end. Then we're gonna consume GraphQL out of Hygraph into, we're actually going to work on the Learn, Build, Teach site. So our goal is to add a contributors display. Maybe we'll do a specific page, a contributors page to the Learn, Build, Teach project. And anyway, so we'll talk through that. That will be inside of SvelteKit, which is like, I'm a huge fan of. Brian has not done much / any. And I'm really curious to see.
I have read SvelteKit. That's about as far as I've gotten with it. So I recognize bits and pieces of it, but I have no clue. Like I've been in Next World. I've been in 11D is my gem. I'm actually writing a book on 11D. So like that's a big deal. I love 11D. SvelteKit's one of those things where it's like I need to get into, because also it's one of those things that ships vanilla stuff to the browser, which I'm a big fan of as well.
Yep. Huge fan. I'm going to do one thing, and this is like, the other thing is this is a sponsored stream, but sponsored streams work out, like I have to say it, but sponsored streams work out so well for me because I have all these really cool companies and friends that reach out for sponsorships, which means I get paid to do stuff that I enjoy and hang out with people that I enjoy anyway. So everything that I do that's sponsored is all stuff that I highly recommend people actually check out. And because of that, I'm going to share a link if you are interested in what we do today. And I'll share this probably a couple times, and you maybe want to follow along or do something else later on. There's a sign up link for Hygraph, and it's got some UTM metrics. You can strip those out if you want to, but it's just a way to say that like you came from this stream and found out about Hygraph and then went and did something. That's all it is. So I'm not making any money off that or anything, but
that's also the great thing in like DevRel land too. It's like I'm being paid as a full-time employee to come hang out with you and make something cool with a product that I think is pretty darn neat. So I'm excited to do it as well.
100%. So we haven't done like your introduction. So do you want to start there? So tell us like who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into the idea of content federation and more specifically Hygraph, and then we'll get more hands-on as we go. Sound
Yeah,
good?
totally. And the great thing about what we're doing today is the stuff that I have to kind of show is all super low code too. So like you're going to show some code, stuff that
Mhm.
I'm going to show is actually technically no code. Anyway,
Yep.
I am Brian Robinson. I am the head of DevRel at Hygraph. I've been at Hygraph for a few months now. I've been some form of designer and developer on the web for over 15 years now. And for about 10 of those, I've been involved in the creation and maintenance of technical communities, starting locally in the Memphis scene, which is where James and I met years and years ago. And then more recently doing it at companies as a DevRel, growing communities, growing developer education, that sort of thing at multiple platforms.
Nailed it. Yeah, and I miss you, by the way.
I know.
Um,
I'm gonna be in town Christmas, but I'm pretty sure you're leaving town for Christmas. So
yeah, I'll be gone. I don't know exactly what date, so we'll figure out if any of that overlaps.
yeah.
Anyway, it was always super fun hanging out. Chris Lamar is hanging out in the chat, says he
Yeah.
misses both of us.
Chris is saying that he
Chris is
misses both of
amazing.
us, but we live like 20
Yeah.
minutes apart because he's
Oh,
also up in the
sweet. So
mitten.
you're yeah. I didn't know you were that close, but I knew he was in Michigan. That's cool. Cool. So that's like who you are, what you do. You've been at
Yep.
Hygraph for a couple of months. Tell us like the high level of Hygraph, and then we can talk about the content federation piece. So
For sure.
what is Hygraph, and like what sort of problems is it looking to help solve?
So long-term fans of James's channel actually know of Hygraph. They just might not know the name Hygraph. James did a video, I don't know, like a year ago or so,
Mhm.
on a little company, little thing called Graph CMS, which is, as it turns out, what Hygraph is. Hygraph is the rebrand that we went through this year to talk a little bit broader in the market about what we do in content federation and some other things. However, kind of at its core and where we can kind of start the journey with what Hygraph is as a headless CMS. Hygraph is a set of APIs around a nice hosted CMS interface that allows you to consume your content as data in kind of whatever front end framework platform you want to use it in. So it's got it's the first GraphQL centric CMS. That's why it was called Graph CMS back in the day. Other CMSs had GraphQL capabilities. They were the first one that kind of brought it in as the like defining feature. So if you're familiar with GraphQL, you know it comes with a lot of great like mix and match features. All that comes together in your APIs from Hygraph as a headless CMS as well. So that's kind of the basics of it. There's a lot that goes into that. There's tons of features, very few of which, honestly, we're going to touch today, other than some basics and our newest set of features around what we call content federation.
Tell me more.
I just gave you the pause just in case.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
No. That's exactly where I was going to go next. So you're right on it.
yeah. I love a good storytelling opportunity. So content federation at its heart is solving, I'm going to say solving one of the definitive problems of, I'm going to say the Jamstack. It could be mock-based architecture. It could be serverless architecture, whatever you want to call it. I'm a Jamstack fan. I've enjoyed it since the term came around because I also like static sites.
I'll interrupt really quickly.
Yeah,
You were like an inspiration for me to get into the Jamstack, to try
yeah,
out Netlify, to learn about Netlify functions, which again is like if a tip for people that if you want to like get inspired and learn and do more, like just be around other people that are doing more slash other things that you don't know about and learn from them, which is exactly what I did early on. And now that's a big part of like my content is around that same ecosystem that I got really inspired from you.
that's awesome. And that was like way back in the day. That was before I was being paid to do any of this too. Like I was just
Mhm.
truly passionate about static sites and the Jamstack.
Mhm.
But anyway, what I consider to be like the defining, not limitations, but problems with the Jamstack or mock architecture is the fact that you break out into all these microservices. You break out into all these APIs, into all of these services. Honestly, it's a big like software as a service play. Things like FaunaDB, things like Hygraph as an API, things like just making your own serverless functions with Netlify. All these places are places that you have to query your data from. Maybe you've also got things like an internal SQL database of some sort, MySQL, Postgres, whatever. And you want to bring all those together into a website.
One source.
You
Yeah.
yeah. So what content federation is a way of doing that. There are multiple ways of doing this, content federation being one of them. You could handle it on, say, like the platform side. You could kind of bring them together in some sort of like custom middleware on either your server or in a serverless function. You could kind of bridge those together in code. You could take it on the front end and you could patch these together with like 4 API calls and then bring all that together into one, big JSON object. Or if you want your editors, your marketers, your content creators to be able to also interact with that data and stitch that data together themselves, you do content federation. You bring all that together inside of your CMS or your content federation platform, such as Hygraph, and then you get one API coming out. So you could grab products from BigCommerce, reviews from FaunaDB. I've got an example using the D&D 5e API that brings that in and allows you to grab spells from a spell list. You could bring all that together onto your product e-commerce website and allow your editors to also like pick and choose from that. So like pick a product, get all the data in a GraphQL API and serve what you need in kind of a back-end for front-end situation on your front end as well.
Yep. Yeah, it is. I think that's stereotypical of the Jamstack, or like whatever the phrase is for it, that the things that we pull in are all over the place. It could be a lot of different sources. Having those in one central place from an API perspective is really nice. So I think that's like part of the story, but the cooler thing to me when we did our like demo preparation beforehand was you just showing me how that gets incorporated into a headless CMS. I was kind of like blown away that like that integrates directly. And then again, you get that like one GraphQL endpoint that developers can query and get data and stuff. But the way it integrates at the headless CMS level was pretty impressive. And anyway, I think probably the thing that will help it make the most sense is just to dive in. And so we'll start inside of Hygraph, and then we'll move into SvelteKit code. And like the SvelteKit code will be relatively simple. We're just going to query a GraphQL endpoint, bring in the data and display it.
Yeah. And so everyone's kind of on the same page. What we're going to do is we're going to take a Hygraph CMS app, right? We're going to build a model in it, a content model, to have like a title and maybe a body for a page and some other stuff. And then also have some sort of GitHub data live next to it. So we kind of brainstorm, we're going to grab collaborators from the Learn, Build, Teach Discord bot to kind of bring in, but anything that's available in GitHub, in the GitHub GraphQL API, we'll be able to query from within Hygraph. So as we go through it, if it turns out that like we significantly like undershoot the amount of time it takes to do this, which is entirely likely because I do think it's a relatively simple thing. If y'all have any ideas for what we can bring in, let us know.
We could do other stuff. Absolutely. And we could do that from other, just to get wild and crazy. We could pull stuff from not GitHub as well. Like we could pull in, which one we talked about this. Does Pokemon have a Pokemon has
it's got
GraphQL,
a really terrible GraphQL API.
So
I will say more than one remote source is an enterprise feature, and I'm not prepared to be able to upgrade you to an enterprise.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
But we could create another one and we could do some sort of other thing on there too. But yeah.
Or we could do like get some sort of metrics around like how many commits or something to the repo or something like that. Like we could pull in other data. Yeah.
And like code changes. And like my first example I built with the GitHub API was a change log. And so it pulled pull requests in and showed the lines of code that were deleted and added. And I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff in GitHub anyway.
Oh, that'd be interesting to do like a tally too of like all the lines added over a certain period of time versus all the lines, and show like this is probably a separate project, but that would actually be a cool visual representation of a product or a project, just to see how many you've added versus deleted over time and what the net is.
And that's kind of like what I liked about doing it with pull requests too. Like you could have in a pull request 8 different commits, and then being able to show each individual commits number, code removal, code addition stats is a cool thing.
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, and to be clear, like one remote source is free on our community plan. It's just when you get more remote sources that you have to upgrade. But yeah,
fair enough.
One is enough to do some fun stuff.
Yes. Ose said try the Twilio video API. I don't know if is that a GraphQL one that you're referencing? I would think it's probably something that is not just like data readily available, but I'm not sure. So
Yeah,
maybe.
so something that could be interesting, and also you can do this with REST APIs as well. It just there's more overhead to it because we create the GraphQL API around it. You have to like do your typing and your schema setup in the admin. So for today, we're going to use a GraphQL API to showcase everything. But any REST API can be done in the same way. You just have to set up your own schema for it.
Oh, I actually didn't realize that, but that makes sense. So the benefit of doing GraphQL is you're going to get the
The introspection,
intro. I always
introspection. Yeah,
introspection. Versus if you don't have the introspection available, you'd have to go through and do that stuff
you
yourself.
make your
based
own.
on- Yeah, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
absolutely.
Hopefully it's the right one. That looks right to me.
Hey,
So
look, Hygraph.
yeah, everybody let us know. You have questions, comments, things you want to see us try that we can do in a reasonable amount of time. Just let us know.
Yep.
So federated content platform. You used that messaging earlier, which is perfect. You kind of like slid it in very nicely. Everything we're doing is on the free tier. So just to clarify again, like all free tier, people can go and do all the stuff that we will do today on your own and play along. There is a sign up link if you want to go and give it a shot. It's there. And start with a new project.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'll just call this learn, build, teach. And this is going to have data for the learn, build, teach, capital teach website.
Yep. And then region that's closest to you. There's a US, US East.
Yep. Cool.
And then we'll make it. And we'll have a lovely blank project from which we can do whatever we want.
Yes.
There it goes.
You ever, I just got done editing a video and it's always like stuff not that was slow, but just like things take time to actually create. And it's like in YouTube videos, it like moves so fast because you usually just like cut out of that stuff and get
you hold option, right on, click and drag to shorten things and it speeds it up. You get the little rabbit icon and All right, so here we are in the dashboard for a Hygraph CMS instance. You get a little onboarding stuff. It tells you what you can do. We're actually going to follow these a little bit. We're going to set up a schema. We're going to create some piece of content, and then we'll skip the other ones and do some fun API stuff. So first and foremost, we need a schema, a content model to work with, and we're going to do that from within here. So go ahead and click the schema. Go ahead and click that purple dot. It's letting you know that we have a new navigation. It's going to keep blinking at us on the left-hand side if you don't pay attention to it. Yeah. Cancel.
Can I have to choose a rating?
You shouldn't have to. It didn't make me earlier today when I canceled out.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we didn't want a review. That's all.
Exactly. Are you really sure you don't want to give us some sort of review?
Maybe.
All right. So we have kind of this blank area. We have no schema, no content models at all. There are a few different things we can do here. Just to run over them real fast, we have models. That's what you're going to have for each of like your content types. So in this case, it'll be like a page or post or product or any kind of thing like that. We have this idea of components, which are reusable sets of fields. So if you have something that you use over and over again on different content types, you would set up like a component that would have like 3 fields in it and be able to use that component in your content types. And then remote sources, we're going to cover in depth a little bit later on, but that's how we do our content federation. And then enumerations for setting up lists that you can use over and over again in various models. But for now, we just need to add a new model.
Cool. Also, a question for the chat. Enumerations, enums. How many people have used an enum in code in the last month or so? Like, they're actually really great for the right use case, but I feel like we rarely actually use them. Chris says never. So that's fair.
Yeah, me too. It's a totally fair point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we give this a display name of some sort. So what are we building a page? Are we building? What are we building?
Yeah, I think this will be a page. So this will be like the contributors page.
So I would actually have it just be called page, and then the content we'll add to it will be the contributors page.
The contributors. Okay.
Yeah. And then it gives you an API ID and a plural ID, and that's all fine. Optional description, and we can go ahead and add it. So, and then we'll get a nice blank content model. And from there, we'll be able to add a few fields just to have some content in there. So a page probably needs a title, probably needs a slug, probably needs some sort of body. We could do a rich text field for that. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and say title. And then select use as title field on the field options down there. That's going to make it the unique field for this. And click add. And we'll do the same.
I remember thinking back, like once you showed me the dashboard, I was like, oh, I remember how nice looking the dashboard was with GraphCMS and now Hygraph. It's very visually appealing.
It's a clean interface. I like it.
Brittany
so yeah,
says
the next thing we need.
Hasn't used enums really either. They are really great, but I feel like they just don't get used that often.
They don't get the love they deserve, perhaps, and that's because people like me who like teach stuff. I'm like, I don't use them. I haven't used them, so I'm just gonna move on. Anyway, so we need a slug probably.
Cool. So this will just be contributors, or no, sorry, this will be slug. I'm saying the actual value of this later on will be contributors.
Yeah. So what you can do is you actually generate slug from template as one of those slug options there. And you can actually grab fields and like format your slug however you want. So do a curly brace. Yeah. Title.
Sweet. Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
Because I've seen the slug be tied to the title and other headless CMSs, but I don't remember the option to actually choose which properties to tie it to. I don't know that I've seen that before.
Let's say I know that in at least one other, you can choose what you want it to be, but that other one is code-based configuration. So we won't get into that.
Yep.
Yeah, so we should be able to save that now. And
I like the only other thing that I might add is a multi-line text for like copy, I guess, or like body, just like.
Well, what would you like it to be? A rich text editor that you can get HTML or Markdown out of? Would you like a Markdown editor that you can get Markdown out of, or would you just like random string of text?
Markdown. Did I not do so? Multi-line text is not. Oh, it's still not rich text. Sorry. Yep.
Yes. So there's rich text and there's Markdown. I would recommend the rich text because you can get in the GraphQL API Markdown or HTML out of. From the even though that's a shortcut, and you should definitely serialize it on your own. And I have a video I just released on doing that, but we do give you HTML or Markdown coming out of it.
Okay. Sweet.
And don't worry about allow embedding or enable embedding. Everything's good as default on this. You can see there's a lot of options, like localization is built in from the get-go. You can have a whole bunch of different locales in there, so you can do all of that work. It adds complexity to the front end because it's localization, of course it does, but it's all available in the back end as well.
Yep. Cool.
All right, so we now have what amounts to be like a decent little page model. We could go in and we could add a little content to it, but we can do that later as well. The next thing we can do is create a remote source, which is what we're actually here to do today. So a remote source is a way of querying inside of Hygraph various external APIs and then bringing that data all together into our GraphQL API. And the great thing is it's never being stored inside of Hygraph. It's always happening and merging on these requests, which means that you never have not duplication. You never have out of sync data at this point. And we have some things you can deal with, like when to get the refresh on the data. That's kind of more of an advanced thing. Anyway, we're gonna give this a display name. I would just call this GitHub because it could be for anything in the GitHub GraphQL API for this.
GitHub. Sorry, I was moving my like legs are tired, so I've got this like calf stretcher thing. So I'm standing on the calf stretcher.
Then you got like change the angle on everything, make sure that you're getting the perfect line,
Yep. And I need to shift a little. Okay, I think that's good. Revertibles, James and Brian on the same show. Two awesome people. I agree.
True
I
that.
Agree.
Yep. I
Doesn't
agree
get
as
much
well.
better.
All right, no description needed. Enable debugging would give us better errors in console. We don't really need it for this. It will theoretically also like surface like sensitive information sometimes. So it's a good thing to have disabled for the most part. And then you can choose either. And what we're doing today isn't that big a deal. But yeah, you can choose REST or GraphQL. Today we're going to do GraphQL because it's easier with the introspection. So then you can tell it where this API lives. If you have your own API, it's going to be whatever endpoint you've got. In our case, we're using the GraphQL GitHub API, which is saved it somewhere. You're typing it in, you'll find it before I do.
I know you have it. I was going to see how easy it was to find from here.
And finding the endpoint is actually the hardest part. Oh yeah.
I feel like that's a common thing actually. So I was actually curious to see what it looked like. Brittany commented about how I say revertibles. I got that from Corey Weathers, how he says it. And I always thought he said it in a really cool way. So anyway, revertibles. Public schema, maybe.
So if you go back to where you were a second ago, on the page, there's one little teeny link that says root endpoint. That's what we want. See the second bullet point? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So
that's the API that we want. Yep.
Cool.
The hardest part about this is learning the GitHub API.
Right. Yeah.
I did this on I did my first GitHub remote source live on my own stream, and spent the first like 20 minutes just like bashing my head against their API, just not completely understanding what I needed to do. Anyway, we need that, but we're also going to need a header on this because we need to authorize this to make requests. And to do that, we'll do an authorization bearer token, and that will be a personal access token from your GitHub account.
So this is under settings, and then there's like developer stuff. What was the tab? We did this the other day.
It's all the way at the bottom of the sidebar. There's a developer section.
Developer settings.
Personal access tokens.
Personal access tokens. I just got a message that distracted me from my wife that I'm really excited to share, not publicly, but 2 people, one of which is listening to the stream now. I'm going to share this message with you soon. There's the like drama suspense for the day.
Dang.
Yes. So,
and then for this, we need a classic token. GitHub just released a new set of like granular permissions, but they haven't enabled GraphQL on that yet. So for using the GraphQL endpoint, we have to use the classic tokens.
Sweet.
And then from here, we can just generate a token.
Generate new token, not fine grain. We want to do classic.
Yep.
Oh, here's the whole song and dance.
Two-factor authentication time. Yes. Here we go.
Security.
Do a little dance while we wait.
What's it really worth? Who knows? Wrong authenticator.
You can do it. You can do it.
Can I though? I feel like it's questionable. All right. 33887 and 2. We made it.
Yeah, good job.
Cool.
And then we have to figure this out.
This is for learn, build, teach project in GraphQL. Oh, this is interesting. They have a default of 30 days for an API token.
Yep. This is when I was demoing this for you off stream. This is why
yours had expired.
It had expired.
Yeah. How often, and this is nothing to do with Hygraph, but how often would you generate one of these and want to manually regenerate in 30 days? That
I am not a security expert, and I should definitely not be asked that question, because you know what I did when I ran to that issue? I clicked that thing. I clicked the no expiration, and then it warned me, you don't want to do that. And I said, yeah, I kind of do.
I'm curious what this message. So strongly recommends that you set an expiration date. I just can't believe, like maybe 90 days, but then like from a development team perspective, that means you have to have like an email reminder every 90 days,
or you set up automation around it, right? Like, I don't know. It's a headache, but it's definitely like probably worth it for super hardcore stuff, for stuff that really has to be secure.
Really interesting.
I mean, for this, we can do 30 days, right? Because we're doing it for the stream. Not a big deal.
For the stream. It's like for the gram, but for the stream.
Yeah. And then I can't remember what permissions we need, but I know we probably need all the repo stuff. And then
we don't need workflow, write, delete packages, admin stuff, notifications, just user stuff. Not gonna do maybe read all user profile.
Yeah.
GitHub notify you via email when it's about to expire. That's a good point. That's true. Still, no, definitely. I'm really surprised. I mean,
you have to remember, we're talking GitHub's in Microsoft now. Like, they do have to worry about all these security things. It is an actual concern for the toys that you and I make. Like, who cares? But
hey, the stuff
real world stuff
is like very minimal. So you're right.
they're amazing toys, is what they are, but they're still toys.
Yeah. Read project, I think, because we're gonna get stuff from a project, maybe. That feels reasonable.
If it doesn't work, what we'll do is we'll just make a new one and give it all permissions. Yeah.
All right. Yes. I'm going to copy this. This will copy to my clipboard. Number one thing, people will get a multiple clipboard history app because it's such a game changer. I need to do a video on it because it changes the way I do everything. Also, I'm going to take a quick break to call out because we'll probably get back there anyway.
Yes.
But Brittany says that the new SvelteKit site. Whoa. Ooh. That's cool.
SvelteKit. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. The Svelte Origins documentary.
Oh,
that was me.
JQQ right up on screen.
Right before Borat, which is like, how much better could that timing be? This is an interesting. That's a cool, very different layout.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. This looks awesome. And the showcase, that's great.
Also, I'll note, and I don't know because I haven't inspected it, right? But that headline way that was kind of set up, floats in CSS are not evil, my friends.
I was going to say
they're used for very specific things.
Yeah.
That you can't do that without floats. That's got to be a float, right?
That's a float, Brittany says. Yeah. So question now for the chat. When is the last time you've used a float? Me, it's been since I learned about floats 6 years ago.
I used it just the other day.
I'm not surprised. I could see you doing that. I could see you having more creativity with design for that.
Well, so imagine, if you will, you have a block quote and you could do like a full width block quote and those look nice. But what if you want like just a little call out and like have it on the right side and the text wrap around it?
Yeah.
You have to use a float. I have an entire presentation on like CSS layouts and I'm passionate about that too.
I've seen that one or a similar one. If I've seen
you helped me record it, the YouTube video version of it
cool.
was using your lavalier mic at Codapalooza.
Yeah. Yep. Me and Brian go way back. All right, cool. So we've got we've already got this copied, I think, but there's my token. People will hack this later on from the stream.
We will click revoke.
We will try to remember to do that. If not, it'll only last for 30 days. Actually, we should have probably made this should have probably made it just a day since we're doing this on stream, but it is what it is.
Because the nice thing is once you put it when you put it into the interface, it never shows the entire thing because the input's too small. But yeah.
Yep. Greg in the chat is asking Kadu if do you need to set a new token number or just click to renew? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I followed that. If it's like in the, maybe you're just saying.
When Kadu was saying about GitHub notifying you. That's a good question on whether you can just say yes, I'm still using it, or if you have to regenerate it. That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. GitHub does.
If they gave you a button right there to click renew, that could be like a reasonable, like it seems very easy to do, is what I'm saying. All right, anyway. So we have this. Do you know right offhand? I'm assuming you do because you are prepped for this. What's the key name for this? Usually there's
authorization.
Authorization. Okay. And then is it a bearer token? I think it is.
I think it has to be a capital A on the authorization. I think it's case sensitive. I don't 100% know. But yes, it's bearer space and then the token that we got.
I wonder if authorization, I feel like they're not case sensitive, but I guess that depends on the implementation.
I always see it with a capital A, so I always put it with a capital A.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's fair. Kadu says he's never renewed a token this way, but I guess you need to generate a new one. Might be wrong. Yeah.
It makes sense to me that you need to. Yeah. All right. So scrolling down, we have this header. We have the base URL. The base URL is what Hygraph is going to be querying. That's where the queries will be sent to. The custom input type definition, we're not going to need here today. You'd be able to add various additional things in here. And the REST-based one especially gets very in-depth on the custom input types.
And that's where you'd have to define like
schemas
mapping
and all that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And there's two of them on the REST API. This one's just if you want to add a way of querying in a different kind of manner in this. We don't need to worry about that here. We also don't need the introspection URL because the introspection URL is not different from that base one. However, unlike a lot of GraphQL APIs that I've worked with, the introspection URL is a GET request for GitHub, not a POST request. And then we do need the introspection.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we do need the introspection header, the same as before authorization with that bearer token. And yeah, it's strange. I don't actually know. Again, I'm not like super GraphQL expert.
Yeah.
I don't know why you'd want post versus get in this kind of situation. I do know that a lot of the ones that I've used use post in introspection, and I do know that GitHub does not. So
Fair enough.
food for thought on that.
I'm curious how many people spend a decent amount of time with GraphQL. That's still something I've spent time with, but not a ton. So it's not my like strongest thing either. Let me know like what people's experience are. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but Chris's response to floats, he said, "Oh hell no, oh hell, many moons ago is the last time he's done that."
Hey, I do not use floats for any sort of actual layout, but
Yeah.
it has one use case that was baked into the specification when it was originated, and that is
Yep.
specifically to take an
To
element
do
and
this.
have
Yeah.
text wrap around it when the internet was nothing but documents, when it was nothing but text with just a little bit of extra. And then we had to use it for everything, but now we've got flex, we've got grid, we've got multi-column, we've got positioning. Only use it for that one application. Anyway, and then click add, and we're good to go. And Robertables, maybe it makes it easier to lock down the endpoint method in production. That's almost entirely sure what that would have to be. Like that. That's why GitHub would do it. Like it's easier to do the security around it, so they probably made it that way. This will take a second because it's actually doing all that introspection work for us. Cool. It's building out all the schema. Yeah. But now, what we can do is on any of our content models, we can add a field that will pull in information from the GitHub API in line with all the content in one of these models. Yeah. So next to our page's title, our page's slug, and our page's body, we can grab whatever information we want out of GitHub and have it live alongside it in our API. So to do that, we're going to scroll down in our add fields little menu on the right, and we're going to find the GraphQL field, which if you see, it's all the way at the bottom. If you see
wanted to
the
have
rest
cool sound effects as I scrolled though.
Yeah. So there's the rest field right above it, and you can see that the rest field is grayed out.
Because we don't have a REST remote source. We do have a GraphQL remote source.
The GraphQL one would have been grayed out before this, but they're both kind of in there as default. So click it. Yep. I think we're going to start with the collaborators, right? So we could call this collaborators here.
Yep. A couple of comments on the chat, by the way. Collaborators, yes. Hi, Baldy, welcome. It says, I use GraphQL in a prod app. It's good. Just syntax is a bit funky. Takes some getting used to. Code overhead for resolvers and queries is long-winded. I think that's probably fairly common feedback that a lot of people have. But a lot of people think those things, the benefits outweigh those things. So
yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it, like especially when kind of merging different data types. It's easy to get out of hand with a lot of complexity. But I don't know. Yeah, the benefits are definitely there. Anyway, so we got collaborators. We're going to query the GitHub remote source, which is already kind of pre-populated there. If you were on a higher level plan and had multiple remote sources, you could choose which remote source, tell it the method. In this case, I think post is fine for this one. Yep. And then we can find in this huge list of every
everything that they
GraphQL
offer
API piece inside of GitHub, what we want from this, which to start with, we want to find the collaborators on a specific repository.
Yeah, and there's another trick. I think we'll do this, and I'm excited to show this trick because I think it's cool. But there's another trick we can implement here eventually if we want to. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So yeah, we've already hit it, but we don't have the data needed to do that quite yet.
Yep.
So we have for our arguments on the repository, because we're getting a single repository, we need the owner. And we need the name of the repository. So in GitHub, it would be like github.com/owner-name/repository. So in this case, it's learn-build-teach, I believe, for the owner, right?
Yep. So I can actually just copy it out of here. What's the magnifying shortcut on Mac? You remember?
Oh, I just double tap my trackpad. I'm a trackpad user.
You double
tap the trackpad?
What do you mean? Like
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't use whatever shortcut you're thinking of. That's I guess the main takeaway there.
Does anybody else know? Like the magnifier thing. There's command plus.
Well, command plus increases the size of the content. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the magnifier
control scroll up. Nope. Command scroll up. Nope.
Oh, it's something like that.
Yeah. I'm not concerned about it.
Oh, that's the wrong thing. That could have been cool. Can I do it up here? No. Anyway, somebody let me know what that is to bring that little magnifier thing up. Okay, so the owner is learn-build-teach, and then the
Yep.
name of this repository is, in this case, the learnbuildteach.com.
Yep. And the thing about this is the public GitHub API. So this will actually work not just on James's repositories. Any public repository is something that we can get information on and attach it into a project. So if you were writing a blog about open source, right? If you had an open source blog that you were working on, you could actually pull in repository information for whatever library you're talking about or whatever open source project you're talking about, which would be an interesting use case. Anyway, learn, build, teach, learnbuildteach.com. And then what we get out of this, and we could start here or we could kind of dive, let's start here actually. This will get all the information in GraphQL and available in the GraphQL API from Hygraph about this repository. So let's maybe showcase how we can build a GraphQL query around this, and then we'll make it simpler for the API later. So go ahead and click add, and we should be good.
Cool. Command or Control L, I think. Let me try.
Command Control L.
Control Command L.
Not working for me, but
not me either.
Okay. So we can move to content now. We need to add some content to have this. Eventually, talking like roadmap features down the road, we're gonna make it so that you can actually put all of these APIs like directly in at the top level as opposed to having to be on content. But I really like it when it's on content too, because it means that my editors can do stuff with it. And I think that's important. Anyway, we have a default view of a page. We can create a new page, contributors. You can see the slug automatically populates. The body has all these various wonderful things you can do with it. We're just going to use it for some simple text.
Website.
Yep. And you can see we already have a collaborators field down here, but the preview and playground's grayed out. And that's because until we save it, this page doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and save and publish.
Sweet. Question for you from Greg. Oh, it's funny.
I just clocked it.
I did this we had the same thing when Alex Trost was on the stream last week of like, we're both streamers, so we're both paying attention to comments and stuff. Anyway, you go ahead.
For example, I have, so Greg says, it's Hygraph have a way of importing existing markdown content. If, for example, I have a blog already and want to set up a site with it with predefined fields. Yes. So there is not necessarily an importer, but we have what's called the management SDK, which is a JavaScript SDK that you can use to basically create models, create content, create anything you need to inside the system. So what you could do is you could basically write a script that would scrape your site's markdown in the probably like Node file server kind of packages and send all that content up to the Hygraph API. And all of that is done also. There are ways to do it outside of GraphQL, but it's also made easier with mutations in GraphQL. It's a fully featured GraphQL API for management as well as content. All right, so once we save it, you can see that preview and playground button is now active. Now, this data is not showing here for like our content editors because I think it'd be overwhelming because there's so much of it. But we can go and we can see how the API works with it by clicking that preview and playground. All right, so this is in.
Do you know what the underlying playground is? Like it's a pretty standard one. I forget the name of it, but it's in.
I can't remember off the top of my head. It is a good implementation of whatever it is because I've used the same one in some other stuff and it doesn't function.
Really?
I'm super bad at GraphQL. I'm gonna be totally honest, totally vulnerable on stream with your games. I'm bad at GraphQL, and this is one of the first ones that's really kind of felt nice to me. I still get lost occasionally because GraphQL, like when you have as much data as GitHub gives you, you can get lost in it a little bit. But I enjoy it. I think it's a slick implementation. Maybe it's graphical. I'm not sure.
Actually, that probably makes sense. I'm gonna Magnifier. Where is it worth me? I'm really interested in this, and I've got people helping me out, and I'm kind of curious. Zoom to enlarge, dock settings, enable touch bar zoom. Maybe Kadu, if you know like where that setting is, then it's interesting.
Yep. All right, so real fast to walk through what's happening here. We're creating a query. It's automatically named by clicking that property or clicking that field, content page collaborators, right? and then we're asking for a set of values. You could rename that. It's going to give you a different variable that comes back from your query. And we already have all these different queries set up for each of the content models we create. So there's a page query where you can, as an argument, set up the where ID is equal to an ID over in the query variables at the bottom, pre-generated for us from clicking that button. But you could also come in and make this query on your own. And then inside collaborators, go ahead and delete the type name because that won't work. But we have on the left side every possible option for repository, for this specific repository. So just so we can get it, let's find the name, which you can click on, or you can just type name inside the collaborators here.
Sorry, I got slightly distracted. Something going on family-wise that I think is okay, but I'm going to be paying attention to it as we're streaming. Can you give me the last command one more time?
Put inside the curly braces collaborators, type name.
Name.
It was more long-winded for the audience, for you all to keep it short. And then click play.
Play. Cool.
Yep. Okay. So just to prove that we're not only querying the GraphQL GitHub API, above collaborators, we're going to put in the Hygraph data as well. So before or after collaborators, let's do title, slug, and body, and we'll have to expand body a little bit. So, yep.
Before here?
Right there. Yep, right there.
Title, IntelliSense in here is great.
Yep.
Title, slug,
and then body, but body we have to expand because body is not its own thing. Yep. And so if you want Markdown, type Markdown. If you want HTML, HTML. If you're like me, you'll serialize it on the front end and you want raw JSON, so you can do that, but that's a topic for another video. So there's your HTML, there's your slug and your title, and it lives next to whatever data we want from GitHub.
And that's this was the thing that I took a step back when you were showing me, and I was like, oh, that's really cool to marry this up with the traditional headless CMS content that you're already used to be able to do, like the basic stuff, like title, slug, body, and get it in any format that you want. And then also marry that up with data from GitHub or any GraphQL API or REST API. Really, really cool stuff.
Yep. So at this point, we know, because we've done this before, we can't get the collaborators purely in the GraphQL endpoint for GitHub. However, we can get the, what was it called? I've got it in a query over to the side. Specifically, we're going to look for the mentionable users as opposed to the unmentionable users. So let's go and find that in the sidebar.
And this was one of the things that we talked about before, where they don't have a collaborators thing in the GraphQL API. It's available in REST, but it's not available in GraphQL. So in this case, we're just getting basically the users that have been mentioned in this repository.
Yes, and the gotcha that we went through is that this query inside of GitHub's API does require a count of some sort. So in this case, we can do that first button, down, the actual word first, not the first one, of 10 or 15 or whatever we think is going to be the right pagination level for these, and then we find the nodes inside of it. So
nodes directly, not edges, nodes.
Not edges, nodes. And then we tell it what data we want from each of these collaborators. So there's a name, there's a URL, there's a website URL. I think there's an avatar in there somewhere. There's all of their repositories.
There's bio. And then there was one more, just their URL, I think was the last one I was thinking about.
Yeah, there's a website URL. Oh, that's the GitHub URL. And then you can also get the website URL if they have one.
Yep. Cool.
Anyway, so go ahead and play that, and then we'll have an array.
Sweet. So shout out to Mark Huggins, Ryan, Alex Patterson, Ryan Morrison, Brad Garapi, Brittany, who's in the chat, Avnish. And one of my goals is to have, this is my thing that I haven't done well, is have this be enabled for more people to participate in the future. But cool.
So at this point, we can simplify this query if we want to by using the functionality in remote sources, or we can use this query as it stands to go and move into SvelteKit.
Let's simplify it and let's just drill down to basically this, right? Like we can just translate this query to be this from the content side of it.
So everyone should kind of look at how deeply nested and how confusing this query is. It's not great. But that's because we started all the way up at the repository level for a field called collaborators. So instead, we're going to go back to schema, and we're going to go and simplify this by selecting the right fields.
So back to schema to
the
page model, and then
and then this field.
Yep.
So we'll scroll down, and then we'll scroll all the way back down to where we actually selected here. And then we'll pick the mentionables,
not the unmentionables.
Not the unmentionables.
We're not doing that again.
And then we have to kind of replicate this first X number. This could also be something, these are all things that you can put as data on this model and then query inside of here. So you can make it customizable on a page by page basis.
Yep.
And then we scroll down and we can select the nodes field.
Yep.
And we can't go deeper than that.
Okay.
But this gives us all of the data for each of the collaborators' user ID. So then go ahead and update that, and we can adjust our query to make it a much simpler looking query.
1 second, quick pause.
Yeah. How's everyone doing today in chat? Hope everyone's doing well. Also, give a shout out to where you're at. Like I know some of you, and it's great to see all of your faces. But where are you at? And also, what kind of APIs are you interested in marrying together? That'd be good to know as well for me. I've also lost the chat. Anyway, Indianapolis. Hey, I didn't know you were as close to me as you are. That's cool. So no, we're on. We're in StreamYard, James's StreamYard, which means that I have access to see Twitch and YouTube chat. So we're kind of in both.
This is why it's beneficial to have a streamer on as a guest.
Just like, oh, like I emceed the GraphQL Scale Conf a couple weeks ago. And the very last presentation had technical issues. It was the first set of technical issues in a 2-day conference. And then I was just like vamping the entire time, like as they figured it out for 10 minutes. But it was like, I was tired. And I was like, this is exactly when you have technical issues. Airtable, Notion, and GitHub. Yeah, no, that'd be super awesome. Like Airtable is on my list of demos to write. Because I think that there's so much cool stuff you can do around it. I have a Fauna demo that's coming out in the next week or so, which actually combines reviews for products with products inside Hygraph. But there's also, we're giving a set of demos right now that combine Fauna reviews, BigCommerce products, and Cloudinary images all together onto a singular model, which is pretty cool.
Super cool. I like it.
Toledo, another person close by. Midwest represent.
Yeah. Constant. Where's Constance? I don't know where that is. Midwest is the best. Okay, so are we ready to move to SvelteKit?
Let's change the query in the playground just so we've got the query ready to go, and then you can copy and paste that straight into SvelteKit.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so go back to playground.
Here's our query from before, and we're going to delete name, mentionable users, and nodes, all from that collaborators call, and they're closing. Yep.
This one.
One more, maybe. Play it and see what happens. If it errors, we delete one more.
I think that's it. It looks like they match.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
But yeah, that's like the best developer thing ever. See what happens and then go from there.
Exactly. So we just took that, like, I don't know, like 10, 12 line query, and now it's a 6-line query, and the query is just the data we want. So much easier to come back and remember how it works later on when you've forgotten. But yeah, this is the exact query that we can use to build the page.
Cool. So copy this entire thing?
For the moment, yeah.
Cool. Multiple clipboard history. I've got it copied. And then now we're just looking to go into SvelteKit. All right?
Yep.
Sweet. Other way on the screens. Actually, I like them. I don't know if you have a particular order that you do, but I keep my code, like on the full screen things, I keep my code on the left and browse on the right. So then I scroll this way.
Code on the right, browser on the left.
Oh, that's how you are? Okay, so we're backwards.
Yep.
So I'm going to create a new branch for this, and we'll create Hygraph collaborator. I would just say that Hygraph collaborators data. And then we could like I could query stuff and dynamically generate a page. If we were doing this for like multiple projects or something, I could because we also had slug as part of that URL, but I'm just going to
Mhm.
create a
That's fine.
page route anyway and just pull in the data that we were looking for.
Yeah, one of the things we were kind of talking about, like in stream planning, was if we had a bunch of time, we could
Mhm.
actually make this so that each of James's repositories could have a page, and we could just use
Yes.
the slug to make a dynamic route. Now, there's a
Yep.
question that Robertables is actually doing a great job of answering in chat about on the off chance that Meta/Facebook dies, what happens to GraphQL? GraphQL is actually its own like governing body now. It is technically now separate from Facebook. So I would think that it will
Not
live
worry.
on no problem,
Yeah.
and that's what's being said in chat anyway, but yeah.
Cool. Sweet. So people that are new to SvelteKit, the way routes work is you create a new folder now. This is with a new API, and
Yes.
then the name of the folder will basically be the name of that route. Inside of that folder, your main page is plus page.svelte. And this is where we get the Svelte component for this page. I can do an npm run dev and start this thing up. This will be available at 5173. And I'll have this is Learn Build Teach. People can go and find this at learnbuildteach.com if you're interested. And then this new page, collaborator, should be available, but there's no content, which is
And I will
what
say
we're going to look
I'm
to build.
posting in YouTube chat right now. We have a SvelteKit starter which we just updated literally
Oh,
days
cool.
ago.
Yeah.
So it was not working before because SvelteKit had breaking changes, but it is updated to use the most recent stuff, and it is if you want some patterns, they're available in there. So yeah,
Yes. Robertables is saying the routing looks super simple. I'm into it. It's definitely been a mixed because it had been a different way up until the changes in the last couple of months. I think there's been some pushback in adoption, but I think it's one of those things that we get used to the way things have been. Once you give it a shot and you get used to it, I think it is really beneficial. And there's lots of other specific details out there, including a blog post, Brittany, if you have it handy that you want to link in there about those changes, throw it in for other people to read. But SvelteKit is still one of my favorite things in the entire world.
and
Brittany says
definitely
it's
link to
more
that, Brittany.
convenient. Yeah, yeah, please do. And she said it's more convenient, but I will admit it's fugly.
Yeah. I actually like as I was looking to update the I'm not the one that did the update work on the SvelteKit repository, but as I started like, oh no, what do we have to do? Brittany's is like the
Mhm.
canonical SvelteKit
Yeah, the
update.
post. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I recently went through and updated the code that you see here for the Learn Build Teach site just like a week ago and used her post as a reference to do that. So
Yep.
cool. She's got in there. It's also she's got it on she put it in they called
I'll get it for
Twitch. I'm
YouTube.
gonna try to get it for YouTube. Yeah.
Already in
Did I
YouTube.
type
I
all
got it.
that correctly? Wow. Did you see me type all that
It was a thing of beauty.
perfectly? Yeah, that never happens. Okay. So what we're looking to do here is basically inside of a script tag, we're going to query GraphQL for data, and then we're going to display that data. We're not going to do anything super fancy about trying to do this on the server before we get to the client. We're just going to do it on the client, keep it simple, and then we will render data from Hygraph.
Yep.
Hygraph. Chris is going to head out. Thanks for hanging out, Chris.
Thanks,
Always good.
Chris.
Always a
Yep.
pleasure. I got to see Chris a couple of I always said no pun intended. Got to see him a couple weeks ago in London, which was great. Great to see him. Mixed feelings about the
Other
actual conference
things.
itself.
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. So the one thing we mentioned doing beforehand is installing the what did we call it?
GraphQL dash request.
Graph.
It's just a good request library for GraphQL.
Wonder if Fig. There we go. Fig is pulling this up. If people haven't tried out Fig in your terminal, do it. It's giving me IntelliSense based on npm packages based on the command that I'm running. So it's going out and actually querying npm to show me what packages are available. Really super cool. And then we can run dev on that to get it started. And then I'll go into GraphQL requests, just copy. I want to get this whole thing. They should have a copy button for this.
That would be nice. I mean, that was just the NPM, and NPM is kind of lazy about that.
Yeah, I know. So we're importing request and GQL. GQL is a tag template literal.
Yeah,
Do you know that? I think that's what it is.
I see it, and I've used it in various ways. Yeah.
It's used. Style components is one of the most common use cases that people have it for. I've also seen it a ton, and I've used it before in this exact scenario with the GQL as a tag template literal for GraphQL queries. And inside of here, this is where multiple clipboard history,
Yep.
back. We're just going to paste in this whole thing. And probably I would organize this a bit better, especially with my code being big, to move this out into a separate file or something to consolidate. But we've got it in here. It works. And then I want to, I don't know if you actually have preference on this, but the difference between using .then, and .catch versus async await. I'm an async await person.
I'm an async await guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So
the thens end up confusing my brain. The await just sometimes confuses my brain.
Fair enough. iBaldi says Fig doesn't work in VS Code, and I can't figure out why. They've got a Discord, which would be great to ask in. If you want to remind me, send me a message, and I can try to point you in the right direction for that. Christian and Kaidu said they've never used SvelteKit. So actually, let's take just a split second. Say what?
I said half step back for a second.
Yes, half step back. So inside of SvelteKit, we have JavaScript that runs inside of a script tag, and then we have HTML that runs outside of that, and then below you can have style tags. So it's kind of the co-locating of all the things that you would need: CSS, JavaScript, and markup inside of here. SvelteKit also has its own syntax, just like JSX. Actually, JSX doesn't have a built-in thing for if conditions, but if conditions and for loops and iterating through and all that stuff for rendering things, which is really nice. We'll see that in a second. One of the best syntaxes for a framework I've ever used. It's my favorite. So yeah, we'll kind of test it out.
Yep.
I think Brittany's calling out that we need to update this endpoint. That is true.
Yes. So yeah,
tell me.
I was gonna tell you where to find it, but yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, go to your project and go to settings, and we're going to go to API access, and we need to turn on API access also, I believe. So that's the content API is what we're going to want. So we will want that, and we got to make sure that we have it public down below in the public content API. So scroll down and click yes, initialize defaults in that. Yeah. More granular permissions are available. You can do all sorts of stuff with all sorts of different tokens, but this is the public API. Everything that's public on this site is now available publicly from this GraphQL API. You can limit it. You can do auth tokens, all that good stuff. Not important for today. So let's just keep it simple.
Cool. Brittany's also saying, so question from Kadu, does it have TypeScript support? Yes, you can go in here and do this, and you've got TypeScript.
Kadu knows all about how good I am at TypeScript. I was just in a meeting with him the other day, and I rewrote some TypeScript into regular JavaScript so I could use it easier. Anyway.
Brittany's also asking if we should make this a SvelteKit endpoint. The benefit to, and I don't think we will, just to keep it simple. So we'll do all this on the client side, but a SvelteKit endpoint, by default, it will run JavaScript, and it will run it. If you go directly to the page, it will run that JavaScript on the server and then pass the data to the front end. If you're already in the application, it will it'll run that stuff on the client, I believe. You can also define code to just run on the server, and that's a different thing. But I figured this would be as simple as we could do it, is just doing all this on the client side, right inside of the JavaScript for this page.
In the end, for me, I would generate the HTML, but absolutely, let's just get our proof of concept out, right?
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to put this into a function. So I don't think you can use top level async await in here. So we'll create a function for this called load contributor data. This will be async. We'll put this in there. We'll get back the data, which GraphQL returns a thing that has data and errors inside of it. Is that the way that works?
I'd have to go back and look, but what this is going to return, you actually can name it up in your query. Whatever your query is calling it is what you're going to get back. So
Yeah.
values on that, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, data will be the entire thing, and values will be
Yep.
what's on the object.
Sweet. So then inside of here, I'll just call load contributor data. And this should actually do that. One thing we forgot to do is add
Oh
await.
wait. Yep.
So if we come to our page, not the real one, the local one here, and does this say I may not fail to load? Is this from where is this from? Cannot find module TypeScript. I may not have.
When in
I
doubt, go back to
remember.
JavaScript.
I know. Yeah, I can't remember. I don't think I didn't actually add. I haven't added TypeScript to this. So with SvelteKit, you can enable TypeScript by default. But I did in this other branch. I enabled TypeScript, and it's just adding a TS config, installing TypeScript, and then removing the JS config. So when you create a new project, you can just say TypeScript, and it has it all from scratch. You don't have to worry about it. In this case, we'll just keep it simple and do JavaScript.
And we do have an error, and I know what it is because I can see variables is undefined. We our query has a GraphQL variable that we're not defining. Yep. We need to pass the ID from GraphQL for this page. Again, if you were doing this as like a loop and creating a dynamic route, you wouldn't have to worry about it. But let me go to my request here. You can basically pass it into the GraphQL client as a second argument, I believe, as an object when you do the query. So after
the query,
I believe it's going to come, as an object. And we'll have ID colon the ID that we'll grab from Hygraph. You could also theoretically do it by slug, but we already have the ID. So go to API Playground, and then go to your query variables down below, and that's the one we want.
And remind me, what is this the ID of?
The document of the page, of that page that we created called collaborators. This is the document ID.
Okay, cool. Let's see if we run this again.
Oh, still erroring. All right, what's our issue now? We got the ID in there, no problem.
ID. Was there another? So we have ID here.
Yep. Oh, and get rid of stage draft there. And then the other thing will be to make sure we publish the page over in Hygraph if this doesn't work. There we go.
Cool. So that came back.
Yep.
And so what we're looking for is inside of here, we want to get the values array or
values is what we want. Values object, and then the value that we got, you got title, slug, body, and all the collaborator array is now available to you in your template.
Cool. And one of the things I'm going to do is, so this is actually cool. State management and React versus Svelte is game changer. So I'm going to create a variable for each of those. So title, and just initialize it as an empty string. We said body, empty string, and then we said collaborators.
Yep, and that's an array.
Equals, it could be an array. I'm going to start this out as null, and then we're going to update these things. So from values, we're going to say title equals, actually, we can do this. Fancy syntax. So from values, we want to destructure title, destructure body, destructure. Oh, actually, no, we can't do that.
Constant, but can you do that without a keyword? Can you do maybe just the object equals? I've never tried that before. But yeah, you can't, because you can't use const there.
Does that work?
At least VS Code liked it. VS Code was ungraying things out.
I don't know. If you expect this syntax to work here, if you expect it to work, you're probably wrong. Is basically what it said.
Okay, yeah.
That's hilarious. Fair. Yeah, I think that's not going to work. That would be. Maybe you should write in. Cool. Yeah, maybe you should write into the spec and tell them. Yeah. So instead of this, actually here, I'm gonna do some cool fancy stuff. May take as long to set up as
I'm getting nervous now.
But all right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy all three of these with my multiple clipboard history. And clear this out, and then I can type all these at the same time. So values dot. It is cool.
That's fancy. Yeah, you still have an open bracket above.
Yep. Get rid of that.
Yep.
So
That
update
was
those
cool. I'll
properties.
grant you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then to show the data, we'll have an H1 in here and have this be the title just to show that that's coming back. So that's coming
Good
in.
computers.
Well, and then we'll have the p tag with, oh, wow, that wasn't it. Wow, what in the world did that? Okay, p tag will interpolate body.
Well, you don't want to interpolate the body there.
Yes.
Because you already have paragraphs and stuff coming from the body. Oh, the body is HTML. So, and actually you won't want body, you'll want body.html, but that's another.
Oh, and we could also use we talked about, we could use the rich text renderer too.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, you've already got the HTML. You just need to interpolate body.html.
Yep. And it shows. So this is where
you'd have to set dangerously set
inner HTML or whatever. I don't actually know what that is.
What Svelte does for that.
Yeah.
Can you just echo outside? No, you wouldn't be able to do that. But anyway, we'll pretend like that's a paragraph and not just a string of a paragraph.
Here's what I could do.
Oh no.
And then replace the backend.
And Kadu's given us the tip on how to do what we were trying to do before. If you use parentheses. Yeah.
Oh, what? So you can actually do that?
That's pretty cool. Now, granted, the cool trick you did in VS Code is equally cool, James. But that's a pretty good tip.
Wow, hold on. Okay, let me try this because that is super cool. So in parentheses, then title, body.
The power of parentheses in JavaScript is amazing. Like I use parentheses in all sorts of ways I never would have used it a decade ago, and like it does things. It's great.
And
everything is inside the parentheses, even equals values.
Everything.
Yeah. And Ibaldi is saying you can leave out the paragraph tags, and you can. And it wouldn't be body; it's body.html either way.
Yep. Yeah, I was coming back to do that. What? How are you leaving? Can you leave out the p tag and it will render?
He says, yeah.
What does that mean?
Like just leave off the paragraph tags that you opened and closed.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, the ones that I manually put in. Yeah. It will.
Worth a shot.
Oh, I still need to do it as HTML. So what did Brittany say? So at HTML. Body.html.
I like how Brittany actually said, "Do the HTML." I like that phrase. It's like a new dance craze.
I know. Yeah, we're so cool. All right, that is great.
Hello, fellow kids.
And then it can get interesting because now we can do a kit if these are shortcuts that I have. So if we have collaborators.
Yep.
And collaborators.link greater than 0.
Theoretically, if we have no, we'll get something back. Yeah, you're right. Do it this way.
Then we can do a kit each, and we're going to iterate through each of the items in the collaborators array as collaborator. And then just to start, I'm going to do a JSON stringify
all the things
of collaborator. Does that make sense?
There it is. Yeah, I think so.
This thing is telling me that. Where does that say? Collaborats? Where do I have
that?
Collaborators. Collaborats.
That's when you're in the mob. That's what you have as your collaborators. They're collaborats.
Okay, so we need a destructure name, avatar, URL. So let's just start with a p tag of collaborator.name.
And
then what else did we say we have?
We got bio. And we've got an avatar URL that you can put in an image.
We'll do that one. Was there any other text?
URL
for text? Did we have? Yeah, URL. Okay. And we can
theoretically, like for me, I would like wrap the collaborator name and an anchor tag and put it in there, but let's just spit it out, right?
I'm with you though. Let's do that now. So we're gonna wrap this whole thing. We'll say the href is going to be the collaborator.url.
And just so I don't get sad, can you put the anchor tag inside the paragraph?
Is that better?
Yeah. Technically, in the most modern versions of HTML, what you did will work. It will restructure the anchor to be block level, I think, but technically it's an anchor tag is an inline element, which means it has to go inside of a block level element. A block level element cannot be inside of an inline element. It
Oh,
technically
okay.
works nowadays and it's fine,
Yeah.
but I'm old school.
Yeah, fair enough. It makes sense to me. And we'll have the image with source property is collaborator dot avatar. How do
URL, I
we spell
think.
that? Is it all capital U?
Yeah.
Capital U?
Yep.
Close it off. Alt
And is
tag.
that a svelte tag called image, or are we trying HTML?
Nope.
Just making sure. I don't know.
I've been doing so many things, including Next.js recently, and using
Yep.
their image component, and
That's what I thought,
just
actually.
all over the place. Yeah. Alt text here. I can do a template literal string and do collaborator dot name and
The word
avatar.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey, friends.
Nice. All the data. So obviously not formatted by any means.
Yeah.
But the basics are there. Brittany, thanks for the collaboration. And Avnish, who's like 16 or 7, maybe 17 now, but has amazing content.
Nice.
Is super smart. This is cool. So that, I mean, super easy. And there's like lots of things that we could update this with. Brittany called out one. We could turn this into an API endpoint to query the data. We could have it like only run on the server to make sure that it's done beforehand. We could do lots of different things. But the basic stuff of like, the important thing is just to show that you can query data, and all you need is the API endpoint for Hygraph. Yep. And in this case, remind me again, the ID is specific to.
I'll show you. Go head on back over to Hygraph and go to the content nav item on the left. Choose our page. Just go ahead and edit it. I mean, it's actually there too, but on the right
here.
Yeah, but if you edit it, you actually have a whole bunch of metadata on the right, one of which is a clickable ID that it copies. Cool. Yep. So if you ever needed it, you could grab it.
Yeah. So we're querying in here this. Oh, I forgot that we had actually had the where clause. So we're querying this specific page. We could also take away the where clause and query all the pages if we wanted to do whatever we wanted.
It would be a pages query at that point, but yes, absolutely. There's an actual piece of our GraphQL API that's a pages query. Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't need that one. Cool. So that works. And again, like the coolest thing for me is just the combination of headless CMS stuff. So like all the stuff that you're used to doing for headless CMS, including rich text and markdown and images and other things. You have all that, but then also you have the ability to combine these other data models or these other sources into your data model and have that be something that content creators can take advantage of.
Can we do one more thing?
Yeah.
So let's just go into the world of make believe real fast, and let's pretend like James is going to have multiple pages on the site showcasing each of the amazing repositories he has in the collaborators for each one. So let's change the title and slug on this to, I guess we're looking at the learnbuildteach.com repository. So we can actually, let me think. Yeah, change it to go up and change your title first. Like Learn, Build, Teach website. And then regenerate your slug.
And then,
trying to save you from typing.
I appreciate that.
So let's go ahead and save this, and we're going to go create another field on the model. So let's make sure we save it before we move on.
Save. Question in the chat from iBaldi. If you have a front-end app, is it better to use just Svelte rather than SvelteKit? When is a good time to use either? Same advice I would give people with React and Next. Always use SvelteKit. You can just do... I don't really have a reason not to, because you can do just the Svelte things that you would like to with SvelteKit and not have any overhead. But when you want to add anything more to it, it's going to give you a lot kind of out of the box. So I would run with SvelteKit. Yeah.
Yep.
And you said go to schema. Is that what you said?
Yep. And we're going to add a new field to the page model. And let's make it a single line text. And let's call this repository name.
Yeah.
And then just add it. Everything else is fine. So now we can go back to the actually, we'll go to the collaborators field that we already have set. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm
I know
pointing.
where I know
You
where we're
should
going.
obviously see where my finger is
Oh, I
pointing on my
can. Oh
screen.
yeah. I can.
From the camera that's back there, and go down to our query, and we're going to find our arguments. And
Yep.
so instead of learnbuildteach.com, the learn build
Mm-hmm.
teach will keep, because we didn't make a field for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now delete that and hit a curly brace, one curly brace, or two, and then select that new one that we just made, doc.repository name. Now
And this makes
there's
it
a
fully
bug
dynamic.
that I'm putting
Okay.
in. You see how you've got that open bracket at the beginning? When you
Oh
do
yeah.
two brackets, it messes it up. Only one bracket.
Oh really?
We're gonna fix that. It's a little bug in the system, but
Nice.
go ahead and update that. So now what this is going to do is it's going to pull the data from that field on every page in the model and use that to make the query. So right now the query would break because that doesn't exist right now. So if we go to content,
now we have to update.
Yep, the page, and we give it that string that we had already, in the repository name.
In the repository name, but that was
Yes.
still. Wait, why is it breaking? Repository name.
Because right now we're telling it to look for this, and this is an empty string for this page.
Is that the one we just told it to look for? What was the other? There were two things.
It needs both of them. It needs the owner, and it needs
the owner is
name.
the one we didn't set up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So now we need to basically replicate. Well, couldn't we just pull that from the slug? If it matched, well, it may not match.
If it matched, yes, you could. And in fact, like when I'm doing my fauna demo that I've got that's coming out in a week or so, I use the slug for the product. So I match up in fauna, all of my records use the slug as their product identifier, and then I'm able to match it up without adding an additional field. So save and publish.
Cool. Yep, that makes sense. I was just making sure I had the right data. I was thinking about the other one that we hadn't set up yet. This is exactly right. So now just do a refresh on the page, right? And see if we get everything.
It should be fine. Yeah.
It probably, yep. And it flashed a little undefined thing. So we could add, again, doing everything on the client, we could add a loading state and all the things. We could move it to the back end and load it before we load the page and all that
Statically generate your HTML, my friend.
Yes, do that too. So we can do all the things. Question in the chat about tooltips and stuff, not super relevant to what we're doing now. So what I would encourage you to do in the spirit of Learn, Build, Teach is if you have questions like that, join our community, which is LBT website. Join our community, and then you can ask those questions in our help forum and have other people help answer that too. So
forums, they're great. And
really
honestly, the Learn, Build, Teach Discord's awesome too. I'm in there. I've been in there since the beginning.
Early, yeah. It's hard to believe it's been like a year and a half, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark. Welcome, Mark.
And seeing his picture.
Just for you. I was gonna say, I think this is probably an older image for Mark, but still a good one nonetheless. So thanks, Mark, for for being a part of this unwillingly.
Yep. As a collaborator, thank you so much.
Yes.
So as you're just tuning in, to recap, what we did was we actually queried James's GitHub repository for learnbuildteach.com to get the collaborators and marry that data together with the CMS data into one GraphQL API that James then queried from a SvelteKit application.
Yep.
Nutshell.
Yeah. I'm curious what people will think about this when you give it a try. So if and when you do, let us know on Twitter, or especially like in the Discord. I'd love to see people comment about it. Again, I think this is really unique, this idea of marrying up both headless CMS data, because you've got there's other headless CMSs that are just headless CMSs, and now you've got this other thing that's really intricate that you can layer on top of that and not have to have developers go all over the place in the code to query stuff. Have that come in through one pipeline, through one API, query that, and be able to use whatever it is that you want.
Yep. And that really any API. GraphQL ones work best because you can introspect them and we give you all the data at that point. But REST APIs work as long as you're willing to write a couple GraphQL schemas as well. And there's more features coming, like I said, in the next year about all this. And I'll give a promo. Hop in slack.hygraph.com if you have any questions. I'm in there. The dev team's in there. Kadu is one of our top internal folks that's in the Slack answering questions. So definitely hit that up. And if you have any questions around it or anything else in Hygraph, let us know.
Cool. Brittany's got to run. Thanks, Brittany. To the Slack thing, I put the community link in the chat. So the community link has a link to Slack as well as a couple of other resources.
And let me
I'll
get
do
Robertables has a great question, which is how
okay.
do I do the REST API version?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna find a resource for you on that real fast. Our
Cool.
documentation has information on it, basically, is the answer. I just have to find it.
I put
We call
in
we
2
call them remote
more.
sources.
Oh, is that the link? I put in that
Uh,
blog post that we talked about earlier.
oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I put in 2 more resources. One is that link to blog post, and the other
The
the other
remote
is the remote sources
Yep.
document page. So I think I got what you were looking for.
Yep, adding a remote field, and there's something that covers how to do the RESTful version. Basically, what you do is you have to select all the fields that you want to show up. So it does require some like duplication of effort, but that's just because it's REST and we can't introspect on the REST.
Mhm. Comments on Robertables or Robert
Yeah.
Table is his name. I feel bad because I know I've asked you this before. Robertables, what is your actual name? It's so interesting knowing people buy like screen
Handles.
names and then get handles and then getting away from it. David, right? I knew it
Yeah.
wasn't. Yeah. Anyway, I like Robertables is just super fun to say, so I stick with it for better or for worse. Cool. So all the resources are in the
Chat.
chat if people want to follow up. Anything else they should know as we wrap up?
No, just I literally this is the concept that brought me to Hygraph. I think it's like you said, it's
Mm.
unique in the space. It is solving an issue that I've run into in the past. Like just combining all these APIs can be a pain when you
Yep.
no longer have a server. So putting them on a server somewhere makes sense. But if I can do it in a way that gives my content editors and my content creators a space, all the better.
Yep. I love it. I have so much fun learning about all the different tools that are out there because of how much there is to be excited about with all the tools that are out there. It's also overwhelming, right? Like that's part of
Yeah.
web development. There's so many things, but the cool thing is if you have the time to try them out and learn what makes them special, you end up finding some really cool nuggets, features and functionality that can help solve use cases. And I think that's the cool thing for you too, is like having experienced the problem, walking into interviews with the company and then joining the company, like you know what the use case is. So you also made
Thank
a new friend in the Midwest.
I did. I see that. I'm
Mhm.
already chatting over there, but and thanks, David. I appreciate the comment, knocking it out of the park. Um,
Do you hear that?
yep.
Yes. Okay, cool. I never know if that's coming through. Cool. All right, we'll go ahead and call it. Let me see if
Yeah.
there's anyone. I don't know anyone personally that is live on Twitch, or I would send people over there. Do you see anybody that you
I don't even have Twitch open.
okay, no worries. Um, if you I'll give you a second to look just in case.
B Holmes. B
Oh,
Holmes
cool.
Dev is
Oh,
he's
sweet.
actually doing SvelteKit too.
Nice. So we'll raid everyone over to B Holmes Dev. Did I get that right?
Yeah. B Holmes Dev. Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. That'll go over in a couple of seconds. Thanks everybody for coming and watching. Brian, thanks for being here to walk us through this. This is super fun.
Thanks for having
We'll
me,
catch
James.
you all next time.
Thanks, Phil.
And there's still the awkward. Now I'm going to actually